guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a wrap-up video. I feel like I haven't done one in a long time and I have a lot of books to talk about in this video. I've just been kind of like putting this video off for whatever reason. I actually like filming wrap-ups, so I don't know why I put this video off, but I have a lot of videos to talk about, a lot of books to talk about. And I actually have my first gold star book of the year, which is a big deal. You guys know I give gold stars very, very rarely, but they're books that end up being like absolute like all-time favorite books that like surpass the 5-star mark, you know, that are just those extra special books. And some years I give like 4 gold stars, and this year I haven't given any except for one book in this video. So I'm really excited to share that with you, and I'm actually going to share that one first because it was the first book that I read since my last wrap-up video. So I don't own the physical copy, but I want the physical copy so bad because I want to reread it and annotate it because I feel like I could annotate a lot in it. But it is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. As you guys know, this book has been extremely popular. It's been sold out like everywhere, and for good reason, because it is a phenomenal book. Like, I was so blown away by this book, and obviously the title like really catches your attention, but I feel like that's such a good title for this book because I feel like it's maybe something that people feel sometimes when they're in a really abusive relationship, like familial relationship, but it's something that a lot of people maybe don't want to admit or feel guilty admitting. And I feel like that's such an interesting title choice because it's such a taboo thing to say, and people don't want to admit maybe if they were to feel that way. And that's why I think that this book probably like took off so much. But the thing that I found the most interesting about this book was, one, obviously the abusive and controlling relationship that she had with her mother, how she was extremely enmeshed and in like this really codependent relationship with her mother, but her mother was also extremely abusive. It was such an interesting thing because I feel like people in relationships like that, they don't really see it as a problem so much until they see it, and then when they see it they're like, whoa. But then I think the most interesting thing about this book, and I wish more people would write about this topic, but it's child acting. And this is something that I think is such an interesting topic and something that needs to be looked at more, and I think needs to be taken really seriously, and I don't think it's taken seriously enough, because Jeanette is the perfect example of being forced into child acting to make money for her family, even though she didn't want to do it, and her mom basically forced her to do it, and she did it because she felt like she had to. It was her responsibility, and she wanted to make her mom happy, and so she just acted, even though she hated acting. And I think it's so interesting to see this because you have to imagine that Hollywood is full of toxic parents forcing their kids into acting. Like, it has to happen. I mean, there's money involved. That's a big deal. And, you know, there's so much interesting like topics on money in this book and how like she just never saw the money that she made. And it's crazy to me that this kind of things happen in, you know, the acting world and in Hollywood. Like, all of these kids that are literally shoved into acting as kids, which is a really hard job, by the way. Like, I went on one set, I would say like 6 years ago or something, and it was for Johnson & Johnson commercials, and I had my 2 daughters in the commercials with me, and we were on set from morning until literally the sun went down. It was a long day. I had like a 4-year-old and a baby, and the hours were really long. The kids were tired, they were cranky, they had to have like a teacher on set or like a nanny. Luckily my mom was there with me, but I was like, how could you put your kids in this all the time? Like, it just seems like so much work for them. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I could never do this all the time with my kids. Like, it would just be way too much. And I just can't imagine like living that life if you didn't like it. You know what I mean? It's just crazy to me. Like, why aren't there child psychologists assigned to these kids? Like, I feel like if you have a manager or like agent or something, then you automatically should have a psychiatrist or a psychologist assigned to these kids so these kids can tell somebody how they're feeling about what they're doing. And some of these roles that they're taking, like Jeanette was talking about some of the roles she took, like her sister dies in, you know, one of them, and she had to act like she was like traumatized and sad because in this movie or in this show her sister died. And there's another one where she had to act like a psychopathic murderer, like a child murderer or something like that, and I'm like, that's traumatizing for a child to like put themselves into that place and have to act those type of roles. Like, they need psychologists. Anyways, this book is super, super interesting. It was phenomenal. It was so perfectly well done. It was like, the vignettes were phenomenal. Every single vignette had a purpose, had a point. They were quick to read. They were engaging. I was never bored in this book, and I will definitely read this again in the future. It was just so good. The next book is from an author that I absolutely adore. He's one of my favorite authors. You guys know Dark Matter and Recursion are two of my favorite books of all time. So I was highly anticipating this book. This is Upgrade by Blake Crouch. And I thought for sure I was gonna love this. I was so excited to read it. I was like, what is he gonna come up with next? Like, I'm so excited to read it. And I have to say, I was so disappointed with this book. I wouldn't say it was like a 2-star or a 1-star, but I did give it 3 stars. It just didn't have that same punch that Dark Matter and Recursion did. I feel like those books were so unique and so creative, and they were just that really, really thought out, deep, rich plot that's just so crazy, and you're like, how did you come up with this, you know? And so I was hoping that that was going to be the same with this, and it just wasn't. I just wasn't as happy with it, and I was so sad about it because it pains me to give my favorite authors low ratings because I don't like to do it, but obviously I want to be honest, but it just didn't hit right. And I have to say, like, at the very, very end, if you guys want to know my thoughts on this, go read my review on Goodreads. I'm not going to say it in this video because it is spoilery. It talks a little bit about like compassion, and I feel like he was trying to do something with this book, and it was just one of those things where I just didn't fully agree with like the moral of the story, if that makes sense, like what he was trying to do with the book, and I didn't really agree with it. I just didn't think it made a lot of sense. I was like, I just don't think that that's what would happen. And I just feel like it's one of those logical things for me. And it's totally fine because it's one of those opinion things and we just kind of don't see eye to eye maybe. And I think that that's maybe why this book frustrated me. It just kind of seemed silly to me and a little illogical, I guess. So I just didn't love this. I did feel a little bit bored at times in this book, which kind of sucks, and it just wasn't my favorite, sadly. So the next book I read was Lore Olympus Volume 2, and I'm reading Volume 3 right now, but I gave this 5 stars. I just love this series. I love it so much, and the thing I'm starting to notice about this series particularly is it's the perfect kind of slow burn, because I really do love a good slow burn, kind of like enemies to lovers. Enemies to lovers, I wouldn't say they're enemies. This is more like friends to lovers. But like, I like the slow burn when you have the slow burn, but you're also getting those really satisfying moments where there's like flirtation right at the times that you need it. Because I hate slow burn when it almost feels like miscommunication, like you know that both parties like each other, but they're not showing each other at all, like 0. And you almost feel like it's a little bit of a miscommunication, and you almost start to get a little frustrated because you're like, come on, like at least flirt a little bit. And I feel like she does that really well in these books. She gives you something when you're starting to feel a little bit frustrated with them as like a couple. She gives you a little bit of flirtation, or she gives you something to show like the sweetness of the two of them without fully going into like a full-blown relationship yet. So I really, really like that about her writing style, because it's like that perfect, she's just giving you enough to keep you interested in this romance. So I absolutely love these. They're so cute. So the next book I read was a graphic novel from the library. This is called Why My Cat is More Impressive Than Your Baby. It was kind of marketed towards, you know, people that decide not to have kids and why their cat is better than, you know, their friends as babies or whatever. I just didn't find this that funny. I kind of think it was okay. Like, it was kind of an enjoyable read, if that makes sense. Like, I enjoyed the process, but it wasn't like super witty or super funny. It was a little cliche. It was kind of like jokes that you've heard before. You know, there's maybe a couple funny little comics and stuff in there, but for the most part, I would say it was just pretty cliche. It's like, if you're a cat person like I am, it's definitely worth it, like if you see it at the library, to like skim through it or whatever, but I wouldn't say it's like a life-changing read. I think I gave it 3 stars. I'm not mad that I read it, but it wasn't quite as funny or as like original as I thought it might be, so. Okay, so the next book I read was for getting ready for like the spooky Halloween season, and I've been wanting to read this book forever, and I've always saved this book for October. And so I was like, finally, like I need to read it this October, otherwise I'm never gonna read it. Like, if you want to read this in October, make this the October. So I finally picked it up. It's House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. And this book actually, okay, if you like really whimsical things, like if you like Labyrinth, or like Strange the Dreamer, like things that feel whimsical and dreamy, then I think that you'll really, really like this because it definitely has that element to it. There was definitely parts in this book that made me feel like I was reading the ball scene from Labyrinth, and I loved that. Like, I just love that dreamy, whimsical feel, and this definitely had that vibe a lot of times. And it also had that like Oregon coast, lighthouse, fog feel as well, which you guys know I like in books too. So this had a lot of the things that I love in books. The thing though about this book is, for some reason, I'm finding it forgettable, which is crazy because when I got done reading this, I didn't really feel like it was all that forgettable. I was like, that was pretty good. I wouldn't say this book is by any means horrible. Like, I really loved reading it, and I loved the like process of reading it, but I do feel like the end had me kind of going, would that really happen? Like, I feel like there's some plot holes here. Like, there was a huge plot hole in the end of this book that really irritated the crap out of me, and I'm like, did I miss something? Did I miss something? Because I feel like there's a huge plot hole here. I kept like going back and like reading this chapter over and over again because I was like, it has to say something about this. Like, am I the only one that's noticing the timeline is like out of order here? And it never explained it. So I feel like it's a plot hole and it bugs me. And I also kind of feel like the romance just didn't do it for me. I feel like I wanted more, you know? Like, it was almost there romance-wise, but we just needed a little bit more to like really make it good. And I feel like I didn't really get that in this. Like, it was kind of romance-driven to a certain degree, but it just didn't have that romance hit, you know? So I was kind of sad about that as well. This book wasn't bad by any means. There was just some things that were like glaring for me that I just couldn't ignore. So I gave this 4 stars. I don't think we'll get bored out of this, and if you're looking for something with all the vibes, then this would be a great one because this definitely has like those fallish, like winter vibes, if that makes sense. So the next book I read was The Humans by Matt Haig. So you guys know that I read The Midnight Library. I gave that 5 stars. And I really liked The Midnight Library. I thought it was really good. So I was excited to read The Humans because that's been on my TBR for a long time. And this is kind of like a book about this alien that comes to Earth, and he has to pretend that he is this professor guy, like this science or math professor who has discovered like this math equation that will change the world basically. And so this alien has to come down there in this guy's body, and he has to make sure that the humans never find out this math equation that this professor has discovered, because humans are not ready for that yet. And I feel like that synopsis sounded really, really interesting, but I have to say, this book was boring. I feel like this is one of those books that isn't very long, but it like keeps going and going and going and going, and it just like never ends, and you're like, okay, like let's get to the point. Like, that's kind of what this book felt like to me. It kind of shows like this alien who doesn't have any like intimate connection with people. Like, in his alien world, like everything is perfect, right? They've discovered everything to make this perfect utopian world, but they don't really make like intimate connections with other beings. And so he comes down to this planet not expecting to make like connections with people, but then he ends up making connections with this man's son and his wife, and it's kind of like explores that idea a little bit, and it was good in that way, but it just was kind of boring, I'm not gonna lie. Like, if I would have been reading this physically, I think I definitely would have DNF'd it. Because I read it like audio, I think that's why I finished it, if I'm being honest. So, wasn't a huge fan of this one. Gave it 3 stars, but I think it was kind of like a lower 3 if I'm being honest. So the next book that I read was Bunny by Mona Awad. So as you guys know, this is a very popular book on like Book Talk and BookTube. So many people have read this book, and I was just so curious about it. Like, I wanted to understand the hype on it, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna like this or hate this. I feel like this is one of those books where you either love it or you hate it, and I ended up really liking it. Now, the thing that I liked about this book was when you finish it, and this is so crazy for me to say because I usually hate like books that are not straightforward. Like, I love a good straightforward plot that makes you think, but it still has to be straightforward, you know? This is not straightforward. Like, it definitely has this element of interpretation. She wants you to interpret it and kind of analyze it in your own way. And usually I hate that in books, but I liked it in this one because I feel like all the ways that you can interpret it are interesting. And when I got done reading this, I went online and I was reading everybody's interpretations. I think I found something on Reddit and it kind of talked about people's different theories on this book. And so many people had such unique theories, but they all kind of made a little bit of sense. And that's why I really liked it, because I was like, oh, wait a second, like that could be it, or that could be it. So I have my own theories on this. I think personally it's a little bit more straightforward. I think that some people think there's like maybe mental illness involved in this. There's a lot of different theories that you could kind of come up with this. So if you don't know what Bunny is about, it's about like this writing group in college, and there's 5 people in this writing group. It is the main character Samantha, and then these 4 girls that are called the Bunnies, and they're like these weird girls that are like kind of like Cher Horowitz in a way. Like they dress really like preppy and they're really weird. They call each other Bunny all the time, and they're like these weird cult girls that are like obsessed with each other, and they're like really affectionate with each other. And this main girl Samantha's like, these girls are weird, right? And her friend Ava are always talking about these girls, like what the hell. Then one day she gets invited to their smut salon. She goes to the smut salon and they are just doing like these really weird things, and she's like, what the heck? But they keep inviting her, and she keeps like getting drunk, and she like drinks with them, and she's just kind of intrigued by them. But then all of a sudden she just gets sucked into this cult of bunnies, and they do these really weird things. And in this process, her friend Ava just kind of disappears, and she's like, where the heck is Ava? Where's my friend? And she doesn't really understand what's going on. It's kind of creepy. I can definitely say that during this book, I felt creeped out. Like there was a couple of times where I was like, where's this book going? I'm a little nervous. Like her writing style is so eclectic and odd that I wasn't really sure what boundaries she was going to push, if you know what I mean. And so I think I did feel a little bit nervous at times, not knowing where this was going. I loved seeing how everybody analyzed this book, and I just wanted to watch videos about this book over and over and over again after I got done reading it, because I was just so curious about it. I wanted to see what Mona Awad said about it. Like, did she give any hints about kind of what she was trying to do? And I really did feel for Samantha, because I feel like Samantha was in this really weak place where she was trying to find like a home of people, and she was just trying to find her place in the world. And as much as she put on this front of being like strong and like, you know, an independent woman, I don't need the bunnies are weird, she was also really insecure in a way, and that's what got her sucked up into all of this stuff, because all she wanted was a place in this world. And she was really an interesting character to read about. So I really liked Bunny. I thought it was really good, and it was really, really unique. So the next book I read was an audiobook called Under Her Care, and this was a thriller by Lucinda Berry, and I'm reading another Lucinda Berry right now, and I really liked this book actually until the very, very end. This book kept me so engaged. This is basically about a woman who is an ex-pageant girl, and she has an autistic son, and her son are witnesses to a murder. And based on evidence, it looks like her son committed the murder. And she is trying to save her son because she's like, he didn't do it. And I think that this was a really interesting book because Lucinda Berry is, I think, a psychologist or something, or psychiatrist, I'm not sure. So she really understands like different mental disabilities or mental illnesses in a way where she wants to break stigmas, I think, a little bit with disabilities or mental illness, and she understands them in a way that I think some like authors don't understand them. And I think with this book she was trying to maybe break a stigma, and I think in some ways she did. I think that she was able to talk about certain things in a way where you can understand it better, learn about it better. So I think she did a pretty good job with that, because I know a lot of people don't like when authors use disabilities or if they use mental illness as kind of like a plot device. I personally don't mind it. So I think that this book was really good. Through the whole book I was engaged. I was so interested in hearing, you know, what the twist was gonna be, and I listened to this while I was cleaning, which I love listening to these types of books when I clean. Like I literally will clean my entire house from top to bottom listening to books like this. And I was literally gonna give this book 4 stars up until the very end, but then I feel like we just didn't get the whole story at the end. There was like, it just wrapped up really, really quickly, and I feel like there was like holes, and I was like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Like everything just kind of wrapped up, and I was like, okay, so we're not going to talk about this more? Like you just like gave us like this big thing, and we're not really going to talk about that? Like that's kind of a big thing. Like you know? So I ended up moving it down to a 3 just because of the end. I wish that she would have maybe explored some things a little bit more at the end, but it was an engaging read. And so I knew that I wanted to read more Listen to Barry because I was engaged. And if I can be that engaged in a book, then I was really interested in reading more by her. The next book and the final book for this wrap up was a book that I was so excited for. So excited for. Like, I thought for sure I was gonna love this book so much, but I did not. It is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. You guys have probably seen this book everywhere because I feel like this book is one of those books that you just see everywhere all of a sudden. Like witches, romance, fall vibes on like the Pacific Northwest coast with lighthouses and everything. Like, yes. Like, I thought it was going to be similar to like The Wicked Deep or something like that. But sadly, this book did absolutely nothing for me. I gave this book 2 stars. It was so boring. I literally should have DNF'd this. The only reason I didn't, like I literally considered it, the only reason I didn't was because I thought that it was kind of like working its way into being a really cute romance. Like, I thought it was going to turn into a romance because it was kind of building up for it, and I was like, okay, if I just push through, I will be glad that I did because this could be super, super cute. It was not. This is not a romance book. I mean, it has romance elements, but it's not a romance book, okay? Literally, she doesn't talk to the love interest until about 3/4 of the way through the book. And then it's like very insta-lovey. You have no connection. Like, their chemistry was like 0 and you just didn't care. There was no sweet moments between them that makes you feel anything towards them. Like, the romance element was extremely lackluster and I was super sad about it because I was hoping that that was what was going to save this book. But the other thing is I kind of feel like the first 3/4 of this book is literally nothing. You just start meeting all of these new characters because it's like kind of a murder mystery, so you kind of have to like meet a lot of characters. So you're meeting all these characters, but while you're meeting all of these characters, they're just having the same conversation with every single one of these new characters. And it's so boring because all these characters have secrets, but you don't know them until the very, very end of the book. So it literally feels like nothing happens. Nothing happens. And it's all for this stupid apple orchard. So basically what this book is about is this main character, Emery, and she has this boyfriend, August, when they're young and in high school, and then they have a best friend, Lily. Well, one day, when they're young, this apple orchard burns to the ground, and in that, Lily, their best friend, dies in this fire. And everybody blames August for starting this fire. So August moves off the island because he's like this suspect in this murder fire. So he leaves the island and then he comes back like 15 years later and they're trying to figure out like who actually started this fire and who killed Lily. And that's basically the story. And Emery is still on the island, and so when she sees August come back onto the island, she's like, oh my god, my ex-boyfriend. And it's like this second chance romance, but it's like not that. Oh, it was so boring. This does have vibes, if you're looking for a book about vibes, but I'm sorry, vibes can't carry a story. I don't know. The entire book I just felt like was so silly, so bland, so vanilla. Every character was like about as bland as they come. I could not care less. Don't waste your time. I should have DNF'd this because it didn't turn out to be what I wanted it to be. And probably one of the most disappointing reads of the year, partially because I thought it was going to be so good and it ended up being not that at all, so I was really disappointed in it. Anyways guys, that is it for this video. I know this is a long one, but I did have a lot of books to talk about in this video. Let me know what is the best book that you guys have read recently. I'd be very, very curious to hear. What books did you read for like spooky season to kind of get in those like fall vibes? Because I definitely picked up a lot of like spookier, you know, fallish reads for this month. So anyways guys, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.